Guia de estilo e instruções para síntese de fala. Este é o início da mensagem. Comece com energia total e um tom de comando, capturando a atenção imediatamente. Across America's lonely ribbons of asphalt, the dead still take the shoulder. The headlights pass, and someone, not quite visible, walks beside the black. This is a list of 10 roads where locals refuse to drive after dark, where tales pass from hands to porch rails and truckers swap them like weather reports. Each account blends neighborhood memory and eyewitness report. Take them as folklore, not proof, and keep your foot near the brake. Pine Hollow Road, Maine. The road threads through pines so close they make a tunnel and a mist that never seems to fully lift. The origin story is simple. A single narrow curve above a ravine, and a young woman last seen on prom night in the 1950s. Local history offers an accident, the kind towns try to get quiet, and the road keeps saying her name. Drivers report that their dashboards dim without reason, and that headlights go from bright to a hard, failing glow just as they pass the ravine. It was like someone standing at the curb with a flashlight, a trucker told a diner counter years ago, and his voice still tight with nerves. I saw a white dress at the bend, and when I blinked, nothing. But my radio had static for the whole next hour. Neighbors knot a ribbon on the nearby oak as a quiet memorial, and they advise newcomers, slow down at the curve, and if you see a figure, do not stop. The road keeps its pulse there. Drivers swear the silhouette waits for humming vehicles, then slides away into the dark like spilled milk. Willow Bridge, Ohio. An old iron span over a shallow creek, coated in lichen and the smell of wet earth. The bridge's nickname grew from a lost child who wandered off decades ago. Some say the girl crossed the bridge and never arrived home. The story clings to the gate, where rust peels in long strips, and to the way fog collects low, soft as wool. Headlights flare and then invent a second light behind you. Sometimes vans report their mirrors fog from the inside, as if someone breathes near them. I watched a small hand on the railing, a young man told the county radio, voice low, like someone waiting for a ride. When I leaned over the side, there was nobody, but I could smell soap, like a kid's wash day. The town organizes occasional lantern walks that end at the bridge, and the older women cross with their eyes averted, as if looking could pull the past back. They say, do not park under the bridge at night, do not leave children unattended, and so the bridge keeps its quiet claim on those who pass. Devil's Bend, Texas. A highway curve carved into scrub and mesquite, wide enough for 2 trucks, but famous for one wrong line. The name comes from a cluster of late-night wrecks in the 70s when a family station wagon failed to follow the apex. The engine was found running, lights on, and the back seat empty. Since then, the bend has been blamed for phantom headlights that approach from the opposite side and then vanish into nothing. Drivers slow and find no other vehicle, only an imprint on the gravel, a smell like diesel and old cologne. I had to swerve for a set of lights that weren't there, a woman said at a gas station, tapping the map with a finger that shook. Then I found a purse on the shoulder, old and faded. No one I called remembered anyone losing a purse. Truckers wave the legend off when they meet at the diner at dawn, but they change lanes before Devil's Bend, a small practical superstition. Children dare each other to drive it at midnight, and the line between a dare and real fear is very thin. Old Mill Road, Kentucky. Narrow and lined with sagging fences, Old Mill passes an abandoned water wheel that turns in slow, windless nights. The wheel is useless, but keeps moving, or so witnesses say. The mill was a workplace in another lifetime, a place of machines and shouts, and someone, an operator or a worker's child, died there in a way the town prefers to whisper about. On certain evenings, the road fills with the sound of someone striking metal, a rhythm like tapping, a timing that does not belong to no one. Radios drop out, phone calls cut mid-syllable. We heard hammering under the wheel like somebody at work, a widower told a neighbor. We went down with lanterns and found the mill door shut and warm, though the place has been empty for 30 years. The sheriff's office logs calls, but often chalks them to old pipes and imagination. Locals leave a lantern on the old gate during storms and avoid the lane after dusk. Teenagers take pictures with their phones and later delete them because the images always show one extra shadow at the edge of the frame. The causeway has a map of tragedies. Hunters who vanished into the marsh, a ferry accident, a ferry woman who, some say, never made it to her berth. On moonless nights, lights on the water flicker in patterns that mimic a boat's lantern, then sink out of sight with no wake. Residents describe an audible change. The air grows thick, a taste like iron on the tongue, and the radio's AM band turns to a thin voice that repeats names. The dispatch tape came back playing a woman's lullaby, an old captain once said, fingers tracing the varnish on his table. We replaced the tape and still could hear that whisper on nights heavy with fog. Locals avoid the causeway between midnight and 2. Fishers tie their boats away from the highway's reflection. The road keeps the river's hush and the feeling that water remembers, and sometimes it reaches for the living. Crescent Lane, New Jersey. A suburban crescent with neat lawns that slides into a pocket of forest. Crescent Lane has a reputation not for sudden disappearances, but for things in the rear view. Drivers report, briefly and with a startled laugh, that a face appears behind them in the mirror, white and expressionless, as if staring from the back seat. It's seldom aggressive, more like a witness. Parents warn their teens, if you see the face, don't stop the car and don't look too long. Keep your hands on the wheel. I thought it was a prank, one teenager admitted, cheeks pale even in recollection. My friends sat in the back and did nothing. I swear I could see someone looking at me, a pale woman, and when I parked, there was nothing but my breath fogging the glass. The neighborhood association tells newcomers to take the main road after dark, and the face image circulates as an online photo that never quite resolves. People talk about carrying a rosary or a small talisman, not to ward off harm so much as to soothe a quick, irrational fear. Highland Stretch, Pennsylvania. An old coal road that crosses rolling ridges and the ruins of company houses, where the miners' past presses against the present. The road's hauntings are slow. Headlights glower and suddenly show a procession on the hillside, unfinished silhouettes carrying tools. Then a blink, and only the grass. Miners' families still live there, and they tell the new drivers, don't speed. Keep the radio on low, and if it goes silent, don't stop to retune. Our radio cut out, and we heard a chorus like hammers and an engine dying, a school bus driver said before she retired. I turned the wheel, and the air smelled like coal dust, even though we'd been on country road for miles. Members of the community leave small offerings at the edge of the road. A pair of gloves, a rusted lamp, a note. not to placate anything malevolent, but to remember what labor taught them. Highland Stretch is less a place of sudden terror and more a road that presses memory into headlights. Route 66, the 67-mile desert, Arizona. A stretch of the old highway where the asphalt seems to drink light and heat. Legends along this corridor are desert versions of other stories. People find a stranded figure on the shoulder, raise their hazard, and when they turn back, the stranger is gone. And the car's gauge shows the fuel tank warmer than before, as if some cold hand had brushed the metal. Others report a lull in the air, an impossible stillness, and an echo in the mirrors of tires that do not exist. I stopped for what I thought was a car with smoke, a traveler said at a rest stop. There was a silhouette in the distance. I called out, and the road answered with wind. When I rounded that curve again, there was a bottle on the sand, covered in dust, like it had been there a long time. Many who traverse that old highway leave a small light burning in the dash as a foolish comfort. Truckers will tell you to keep moving through the desert after midnight. Maple Hollow Road, Vermont. Winding through sugar maples, the road turns on itself, and in autumn the leaves fall like a low fire. The local tale is of children, siblings, some say, who played among the trees and were claimed by a sudden storm in the 30s. Since then, drivers describe laughter carried on the breeze, small footprints on the shoulder that vanish when approached, and an urge to slow far below the limit. I always slow down near the old maple stump, a woman who grew up on the road admitted. Once I saw a group of kids playing hopscotch at the edge of the lane. I thought they were real, but my neighbor told me nobody had lived there for years. Maple Hollow keeps its season. In late October, the laugh feels kinder. And in winter, the road hushes to a silence that presses on the glass. Parents tell their children not to pick up strange ferns from the ditch. The town's folklore club keeps a ledger of such small oddities. Raven's Turn, Washington State. The turn is a cliffside sweep beside an old logging trail. Ravens gather on birches, calling like a rough chorus. The legend here is recent and intimate. A school teacher lost her life in fog, and since her death, drivers say her figure stands at the edge with a lantern, motioning as if waiting to lead the way home. Hikers speak of a sudden drop in temperature and the scent of pressed linen, the smell of a classroom left behind. I heard a voice humming a lullaby I recognized from first grade. A delivery driver reported over coffee, eyes distant. I thought someone was parked, and I flashed my lights. But there was nothing, just that humming and a lantern swinging. The schoolyard memorial still has flowers in spring, and the road gets its share of pilgrims who leave notes tied to the guardrail. Locals insist, do not follow a light into the understory. Stay on the tarmac. On the eastern border of the county, there is a lane called Evershade, choked with sycamores whose crowns knit together and make a tunnel of light and leaf. There, the legend is not of loss, but of return. A man who used to wait for trains at the old depot every evening at dusk, carrying a thermos and a plaid coat. When the depot burned and the tracks were lifted, he kept coming for years, sitting on the cracked platform until he faded from the town's day-to-day view. Folks began to leave cups of coffee and second-hand coats on the bench at the lane's bend. In summer, the old man's cup is cold, and in winter the coat is dry. Sometimes a passerby says he felt a warmth settle where a hand had rested. People who grew up nearby swear the lane smells of coal and jasmine at dusk, though there has not been a coal train within memory. That mixture, domestic, ordinary, faintly wrong, has become its own kind of comfort for them. You can, they say, follow the smell and find your way back to someone you thought you had lost. These places do not ask for proof. They want only that you recognize the habit of remembering. Leave a thing, light a lantern, keep the lane. The gestures are small and cumulative, the way threaded stitches will one day hold a tear. The living pay attention, the dead answer with echoes shaped like mercy. An extra radio song, a lantern that does not go out, a toy that waits only for a hand to claim it. It is enough to look twice, to slow, to decide against stopping when stopping would be to stand between the road's memory and its current. So when you drive at night and the trees lean in, when a headlight catches a figure too still for the speed you keep, remember that some lanes are for ghosts and some are for grief, some for old mercies left behind, some for the simple order of not rushing. Respect the edges. Let the roads keep their small business of remembrance. Keep your hand steady on the wheel and your heart open to the hush. On a map, the roads look like simple black lines, rational, tidy, indifferent. In real life, they gather history the way gutters gather leaves. They keep stains and anniversaries and habits in their seams. You can tell which roads are well loved and which are merely used by the way people move through them, by the small attentions and the small deferences. On the Oaksby Turnpike, folks leave votive bottles of oil in a hollow tree. At the bend by Miller's Pond, 3 stones sit on the guardrail and are never moved. The objects are not tokens meant to ward off the uncanny, like charms against a curse. They are rather a public etiquette. We will not let this place forget what passed here. I learned to notice those things the hard way. The first time I took a wrong route and found myself at midnight circling past the same red barn until finally the road itself seemed to sigh and let the barn go. There was no dramatic revelation, no apparitions stepping onto the lane with lantern in hand, but a clarity that settled into my shoulders. This road keeps tally, and it is patient. Later, when I asked the woman who lived with her window lit at the bend, she shrugged and said, "It's the only way to teach newcomers to mind the town." That answer was not dismissal so much as instruction. The roads teach by accretion, repeated small acts that, over years, become moral grammar. The practical rules vary from place to place. In one town, you slow for the dead and flash your brights twice when you pass a certain white gate. In another, you stop your music and let the tires hum while you go by. These are not superstitions in the sense of private fear, but customs with the same function as a handshake. They tell the road, "We remember, we will not hurry you away." People, when asked, have a way of explaining the practice that reduces it to everyday kindness. "If you slow, you'll see what needs seeing," they'll say. They mean it both literally and figuratively. Not all signs of memory are benign. There are lanes that are keyed to sorrow and don't let it lie down. They will exact patterns of repetition until someone shifts the ritual. At the northbound stretch called Gray Ridge, a woman named Elsie told me about a season when headlights kept returning to a single mailbox, as if some late commuter had to check for letters he would never get. Drivers would glance and then soften their hands on the wheel. It was not fear that made them careful, but pity. "You don't want to be the one who makes it worse," Elsie said.
let it look like someone goes home. The odd courtesy, the tiny lie in favor of keeping a thing intact, is a mercy. It is also a kind of maintenance. Every time a person behaves as if the past still sits on the porch, the road accepts the posture and answers with the smallest corroborations. There are stories, too, about the way grief learns to hitch a ride. A motel off Route 14 kept a binder at the desk with loose photographs left by families who had stayed and then never returned. The clerk, a man named Ray, would tape notes beside the portraits. "Taken at dawn, 2003," or "Loves black coffee." The housekeepers learned to set an extra cup at the table when such a photograph was found. They learned to speak the absent person's name in casual, ordinary sentences, like a surname slipped into gossip. "Mrs. Weller liked to leave the curtains open," one of them told me. "So we leave them that way, even in winter." It seemed to do something. Once, Ray said, a long-closed radio in a vacant room came alive for a single song at dusk, and everyone in the office heard it, a crooked, cheerful tune the woman had liked. The binder stayed on the desk for years. Sometimes the human tendency toward ritual gets tangled with commerce and vanity, and the things meant to honor the absent turn into performances.
It happens where tourists come, where curiosity itself becomes an industry. There, the gestures are angling for effect. Lanterns arranged in symmetrical rows, notes that over-explain. The road resists that too. The uncanny prefers small, plausible acts to grand gestures. The roads reward quiet recognition, not exhibition. A souvenir stall cannot replace a dropped mitten or a coffee cup warmed and forgotten on a bench. There is a particular kind of grief that insists on returning as if it had not understood the parting. Those are the stories that refuse tidy endings. A man who appears at the ferry every Thursday at noon. A child's laughter behind a shuttered schoolhouse. A woman standing in the diner doorway holding a paper bag no one ever picks up. People adapt. The diner owner starts leaving a seat empty on Thursdays. And the woman down the street hangs a clothesline where there's none, as if she expects laundry to appear. The accumulation of these small accommodations begins to look less like denial than like a city deciding by popular vote to keep someone company. Not all memories that roads keep are about loss. Some are about return, about places that let you come back whole to the living. Evershay is one of those. The smell of coal and jasmine, the warm patch on the bench where a hand might have rested. There are lanes whose ghosts are gentle companions. At the fork leading to the river, a traveler told me of a time when rain would stop for exactly 7 minutes every afternoon, enough to let an old man sweep fallen leaves off his porch. Folks there claim they can count on that brief cease in the drizzle to finish chores, to fold the laundry, to stand in the doorway and drink in the minor miracle. Whether it is physics or folk knowledge, no one bothers with proof. The agreement is practice. The lane is a covenant. We will keep the pattern, and in return, the world will keep its small courtesies. I met a girl who called herself a road keeper in the old sense. She lit candles each Sunday by the stone bridge where her brother's car slipped years ago. She didn't expect the candles to rescue him, no one did, but she insisted on the act. "It isn't for him," she said, "it's for the rest of us. If I put the light down, then the next time someone else crosses that bridge, they'll see it, and maybe they'll think about what they carry." This was, in form, an ethic of attention. Attention, when practiced, accumulates into something resembling grace. The girl gave me a small tin of candles. "Keep one in the car," she said, "for when you find a lane that feels like it remembers more than you do." I put it in the glove box and kept it there for months before I ever needed it.
On another road, the old state line, where two counties meet and the asphalt suddenly narrows, there is a story that is told as a test. New drivers are warned not to slow for a bent man who stands by the white post with a paper in his hand.